Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. You are most welcome here. In the last 6 videos, we created a Christmas tree that was inspired by Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And if you haven't seen any of those videos, I'll include a link to the playlist up here and in the description below. Now, so for the next 6 videos, we're going to do a different themed tree. And I think that many of you enjoy coastal and nautical crafts. So this tree is going to be a nautical tree. And I wanted to pick a specific aspect of that. So what I've chosen is to do a fisherman-themed tree. Now, when we do a themed tree, we aren't necessarily going to make our big family Christmas tree in that theme. We might have a smaller tree in the house that's a themed tree, or maybe you'll see 1 or 2 ornaments or crafts that we do in these next 6 videos that you really want as just a standalone ornament on your tree. I'm really looking forward to doing this tree with you. Let's go have some fun.
Now, over the summer, I made some decorative buoys out of pool noodles, and I thought that was so much fun, and I thought it would be fun to make those on a smaller scale. So these are going to be made out of these finger shooters, which I got at the Dollar Tree. Now, if those aren't available, you might be able to make these out of pool noodle. You just have to shape them down to this size, or you could also make the larger ones. Those might work better for the scale of your tree. But these are going to be made out of these little finger shooters, and also I have this Crafter Square macrame cotton twine, which I got at the Dollar Tree, and this is 4 millimeters. Now you can buy this macrame twine pretty much anywhere. I haven't seen it at the Dollar Tree recently. And we're going to start by cutting up the finger shooters into the size and shape of the little buoys. So first pull off those wings, and then you can easily cut and shape these with scissors. So I cut them to about 1.5 inch lengths, and there is that elastic piece inside. You can just pull that out. Once you've cut them into the roughly 1.5 inch lengths, then you're going to want to shape the ends so that they're sort of rounded at the end. And if you look at real buoys, they come in a variety of sizes and shapes. So what you can do is you can make yours very uniform if you like, or if you want to have more of a variety, you can cut them to slightly different lengths. And you can also change where you begin tapering. So to taper, what I do is I draw a line around the buoy, and that would be somewhere from about, I would say, halfway up to about 1/4 or 1/3 of the way from the top. And then you can also draw a circle at the top around the little hole, and then turn the buoy and cut between those 2 lines so that you're getting a taper. You can also just do it by eye. And with these little foam finger shooters, because the hole varies in size, it's not always so easy to draw a circle around the hole at the top. So for some of them, you might have to just sort of fudge it and do your best to get a taper by cutting. Now, when I made the buoys out of the foam noodles in the summer, I then covered them with some form of paper mache. In fact, I tried 3 different ways of covering them with paper mache just to see which would work best and to show you the differences. But with these, it really isn't necessary to cover them with any sort of paper mache. So I'm just going to go ahead and give them sort of a primer coat of acrylic paint. So this is just apple barrel acrylic paint. Now, you could maybe seal them with Mod Podge before you do this. I did not find that was necessary. Now, once they have their primer coat, one of the fun things to do is to paint them to look like buoys. And I looked for reference photos when I made my buoys over the summer, and I did the same thing here. These are going to look aged. I think it would be harder to make them look brand new and still look realistic, but it's pretty easy to make something that looks aged and somewhat realistic. And the colors that you choose are entirely up to what color scheme you want to have. I originally thought maybe I would just do red and white, but then I felt like it would look a little bit too much like rescue, and I wanted these to look more like fishing. So I'm using a red paint, and I also decided to use a green paint. The red paint that I'm using is Craft Smart Acrylic in Tuscan Red, and I'm adding a little bit of the brown acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree, and that's sort of a reddish brown. So that works just fine to mix it with this red, because I just wanted to dull this red down a little bit. It was a little bit bright. The green paint that I'm using is actually a chalk paint. It's the Folk Art chalk paint, and the color is called Grotto. Now, I just painted them with different patterns, but basically stripes. So maybe all red, maybe just red at the top, maybe just red at the bottom, or maybe just red stripes, and then the same thing with the green. And once the red and the green have dried completely, I'm going to fill in the white areas with an off-white paint, and this is what I call my sheepskin color paint. I used to have a chalk paint, which was that same Folk Art chalk paint, in the color sheepskin, and it dried up. So this is the Apple Barrel white acrylic paint, but you can see that it is a slightly different color from what I used as what I called my primer coat, because I put just a drop of the Dollar Tree's yellow paint in there, and that just gives it that, slightly off-white color, which is so pretty. And so I just painted over again the white parts with that color. Now, fishing buoys generally have markings on them that indicate which fisherman the buoys belong to. So I thought it would be fun to add some markings, and I just used a little bit of black acrylic paint. This is Apple Barrel black acrylic paint to paint on some numbers. And you can have fun with your numbers. So for example, I painted on the year. It's 2022 when I'm recording this, and I painted the year on one of them, and then I just painted on other numbers that were maybe meaningful, maybe not, onto the buoys. Now, at this point, they're cute, but I think that they're a little bit too bright looking, and they look a little bit fake, right? And that's because you can basically see them really clearly. So what we want to do is age them up a little bit. And again, I recommend looking at reference photos. That's really helpful in seeing what aged buoys look like. So what happens is, right, the paint gets worn off, they get bumped around, and also they might bump up against another buoy, or maybe when you're painting one, giving it a fresh coat of paint, you accidentally get some of that paint on the other. So that's sort of what I'm going to simulate here. So I mixed up a very light gray color out of my Apple Barrel white and a little bit of black. And I just dabbed that over the buoys. So basically put it wherever you think makes sense. Like if you look at reference photos, maybe try to imitate those. You can see that I basically went all around all of them, but I tried to concentrate the paint in some areas, as if the paint had gotten worn off in particular areas that maybe got more, use, abrasion, whatever, than other areas. And so once they're painted and aged and you're happy with the way they look, then do give them a coat of Mod Podge. I'm using the matte Mod Podge here just to seal that paint in. And once the Mod Podge has dried, what I did was I used that macrame cotton twine, and it was very easy using a yarn needle to thread that through the buoys. And so I just threaded it through, tied a knot at the bottom, and then I wanted to put just a little loop at the top. So I figured out how big I wanted the loop to be, cut a little bit extra twine, and then stuffed the bottom part of that yarn down into the buoy so that it had a loop at the top. And then a little bit of hot glue at the top just to make sure that it stays looped like that. Now, with some of them that have the much bigger holes in them, you're going to need to hot glue them to hold the twine in place. So you'll tie that knot at the bottom, but then you're going to fill it up somewhat with the hot glue. Now, with that loop at the top, I just wanted to tie something around it, and I looked at some different options. There are different colored twines that are available at the Dollar Tree, for example, and there's also jute twine, there's white cotton. And so ultimately what I chose to do was I did some with the jute and I did some with the white cotton yarn. And I just thought that it looked interesting to have them look different. And this is what we're going to use to secure them to the net that we're going to use to drape these around our tree. So I have one of these fishing nets from the Dollar Tree. And you could cut that into strips. I'm not going to cut it because the tree that I'm going to put this on is a fairly small tree, and so the length of this is sufficient to drape around my tree. But it's also very wide, so you could cut it and then attach the lengths together to get something much longer, and then that would drape around a longer tree. And all I did was just use the either yarn, and I think that is the color Aran, I don't think that's white yarn. So use either the yarn or the jute to tie the buoys to the net. And then we have a garland that you could drape over the tree, or you could drape it over a mantle or somewhere else. And here's what it looks like on our tree with lights off. And here's what it looks like with lights on.
So what did you think of our buoy garland? It was really fun and easy to make. The only time-consuming part really is just waiting for the different colors of paint to dry, and you can personalize it with what you write on the little buoys and the colors that you picked. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That tells me that you like this sort of content and you'd like to see more. And if you like this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. I hope to see you for our next video in our fisherman-themed tree. Take care.